Good evening, everyone. We have gathered here for our second event as part of the IIST Foundation Day and Alumni Day. We have invited three speakers from the first batch of IIST to also celebrate 10 years of their journey after graduating from IIST. And I would now request Aprameo from 2018 Avionics batch to take over as and host the remaining session. Over to you, Aprameo.
Thank you, Manish. Good evening to all. I welcome all of you to this session of Alumni Talks with the theme of challenges in leadership. We have an esteemed panel today with three of our alumni who have stellar journeys of their own. As this year marks a decade-long journey after graduation for the first batch of IIST, the alumni from the first batch are here to share their experience as a part of this event. We have Nakul Kakkar, Dheeraj Agarwal, and Prakhar Agarwal as the invited speakers today. As part of the IIST Foundation Day and alumni celebrations, which is on the 14th of September, we have this incredible opportunity to hear from them and their experiences and perspectives on this. So I would like to invite Dr. Dheeraj Agarwal. Briefly, before I ask him to speak, I just would want to tell all of you about him. Dr. Dheeraj Agarwal is a lecturer in aerospace engineering in the University of Liverpool. He has previously worked as assistant professor at Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences in India and has a postdoctoral research fellow in the Liverpool John Moores University. Dr. Agarwal obtained his PhD in aerospace engineering in 2018 from Queen's University in Belfast. He has published over 20 conferences and journal papers in the research areas of meshless methods, CFD simulation, shape optimization, rotorcraft flight dynamics, and many others. We are extremely honored to have him in our midst and cannot wait to hear from him about his experiences in the path he has chosen. Over to you, Dheeraj sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Let me share my screen. Just I have put a very short presentation so to keep myself on track and not deviate from what we intend to hear today. And let me know if my video is visible, if my share screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Okay. So firstly, thank you all for inviting me, for sharing my experiences with you all and my colleagues who are attending this talk today. And I'm currently working as a lecturer in the University of Liverpool. I joined very recently in the middle of the pandemic going on everywhere. So let me start with a brief how I progressed in last 10 years. It has been a very long journey since I left IIST in 2011. Currently, I work as a lecturer in aerospace engineering at University of Liverpool. It is my second teaching assignment here. Before this, I worked as assistant professor in Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences, which is very known and esteemed institute in India. There I spent almost 11 months, where I have been working in the area of aerodynamic shape optimization, one of the subjects which I love the most. And in terms of, because I love that subject, because I did my PhD in that, and I have started to work on to the research area in that, and started to write some of the grants in BITS, and got associated with the additive manufacturing lab there, in which we have recently submitted a very big 2 crore project for the DST, a fifth proposal, which is for the Department of Mechanical Engineering in BITS, its Pilani, Hyderabad campus. Before joining BITS, again, it was a time of pandemic when I relocated to India. And before that, I was working as a postdoctoral research fellow in the area of flight dynamics and simulations, in which I collaborated with National Research Council in Canada, the University of Liverpool, and DLR in Germany, for directly working on the helicopter flight simulator and the flight test data, which we gathered from the Bell 412 helicopter in hovering and low speed maneuvering flights. So I spent around more than 2 years in Liverpool before I moved back to India. And before joining as a postdoctoral researcher, I spent 3 years to do my PhD in aerospace engineering from Queen's University, Belfast. That was a nice time because I was associated as a Marie Curie Research Fellow in the Horizon 2020. It is one of the prestigious European Union fellowship for the PhD. And I was associated with a very big consortium of universities and uh, industries, particularly under the name IODA, which stands for Industrial Optimal Design using Adjoint CFD. So in that part during my PhD, my main area was concentrated into linking the computer-aided design models from the industries to the CFD solutions, but from the industries or the academic institutions. So we were 15 PhDs working spread throughout the Europe, working in either in industries or in academia, different. So my collaboration there started with the Queen's University Belfast, where I was working as a sole and I was responsible for some of the work packages there. I also associated with Queen Mary University of London, National Technical University of in Athens, then Rolls-Royce in Germany, Volkswagen Research in Germany, then Von Karman Institute in Belgium, Open Cascade in Paris, and there was a couple of more industries to which I was associated during my PhD. These 3 years was extremely challenging, but also very interesting and gave a big boost to my career and my interest, particularly moving further in terms of academic and industrial research. This was owing to the fact that since I was collaborating with a lot of researchers, there was a need, particularly to not only concentrate on some part of academic research, but also in terms of collaborations, in which I need to deliver some of the deliverables, which are also linked to the industries and also other collaborative institutions. So this gave a lot of experience, and thereafter I continued further in my postdoctoral and my lectureship also. Before joining my PhD, moving back to 2014 and 15, I joined Technical University of Eindhoven in Netherlands for around 9 to 10 months. This was the time when I met Pratik Vasu in Netherlands when he was touring, I guess, and he came to Netherlands, and that was the time when we met him when I was working in the Technical University of Eindhoven at that time. And before joining there, I did my master's in helicopter engineering from ISAE France, where currently Prakhar is based. He is doing his advanced master's in systems engineering from there. And as you all know that I have, before leaving ISRO, or I would say before departing from India for my career, for my future studies, I worked for more than around 2 years in Bangalore in ISRO Satellite Center as an assembly, integration, and testing engineer. That was also a very nice phase of my life as I worked on to the first IRNSS satellite, the navigation satellite system of India, as a project engineer from the AIT. I went to Shard, where December I worked on to the final launch phase of IRNSS satellite, the first satellite which went to space as a part of the navigation system for India. And the reason for why I am here is my BTech in aerospace engineering from Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, which I did as a first batch. We started in a small campus near to VSSC and then moved to Valiamala for the last 2 years of our journey. And towards the end, and my last thesis work I did in Liquid Propulsion System Center. So this has been a very long 10-year of journey in which I moved between different countries. I moved around the globe from India, then to France, then to Netherlands, then to United Kingdom, and in between also traveled to US, Canada, then Japan. I represented British Council there in one of the joint workshops in Tokyo. So it has been a very long journey and moving from countries to countries. And opportunities, I always looked for more opportunities, and when the opportunity came, I started to grab them. That is the reason why I moved for different countries. I never stick myself to a particular area or particular reason of the globe, and also not particularly in the area of in terms of the research and in terms of the moving further. That is the reason why I have got a lot of academic collaborations and industrial collaborations as well. This is the vast list of institutions whom I collaborated in the past or I'm currently collaborating, like University of Liverpool, BITS Pilani, Cranfield University, Queen's University of Belfast, VKI in Belgium. These universities I'm currently associated with even. And in past, I worked with NTUA in Greece, Queen Mary University of London, TUE in Netherlands, and none other than ISAE and IIST in Trivandrum. And in terms of industrial collaborations, also I spent a large amount of time in collaborations with different industrial partners. This also gives me a big boost in terms of to know what is happening in industries and give a taste of that to my students in academics, as well as move my research area and guide my students so that it's not only a small part of some research and lab work what we do in universities, but also help the industries to disseminate those research in terms of that could help the mankind and have a long run, give a boost in a long run. So this is all from what I wanted to speak in terms of my journey in the last 10 years. And I am open for if you have got any questions in terms of career guidance, in terms of future opportunities, in terms of masters as well as PhDs, in terms of academics, or also in terms of industries also. I think there are other fellows of mine who will be speaking, like Nakul, who has established himself good in terms of as an entrepreneur, and he would be throwing more light in terms of what being in industry means and how establishing an industry on your own means, and that would be a good talk to hear from Nakul. Thank you everyone for the time. So this is all from me.
Thank you so much, Dheeraj sir. You have packed so much in a decade, which almost seems superhuman. I'm sure everyone here was able to gain much from your experience and possibly emulate in the future. Thank you for taking IIST truly global. So possibly we can take the questions at the end after all the speakers speak. I think that would be
good.
That would be good. So I would probably now invite Nakul sir. Before I ask him to speak, I'll just briefly introduce him. Nakul sir, as we all know, is from the first batch of IIST. A decade has elapsed since he graduated, and we as the IIST community feel proud to have him here. He has worked in the area of launch vehicle engines, rocket propulsion systems for a lunar lander, and also led a team into the development of solar-powered, high-altitude, long-endurance UAVs. He has since successfully pivoted into the space of electric vehicles and is the co-founder and CEO of Cell Propulsion in Bangalore. It is an amazing opportunity for all of us to have Nakul sir join us and have him share his experiences in his journey and give us his perspective on leadership. Over to you, Nakul sir. Sir, I think you're muted.
Yeah. So thank you, Aprameo, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. I'll keep my introduction about the trajectory of my career over the last 10 years quite brief, so that we have more time to take questions and discuss about the various doubts that you may have regarding your own journeys in the coming years. So after graduating from IIST, with a BTech in aerospace engineering, I joined Liquid Propulsion System Center at Valyamala. I was involved in propulsion research group, which essentially looks at various research problems as well as technical and engineering issues that come up in the day-to-day manufacturing of launch vehicle engines. And this research group essentially used to deal with both PSLV liquid engines, which is the Vikas engine, as well as the GSLV engines, the semi-cryo engine, and even the cryogenic engines, which is the upper stage of GSLV. And the semi-cryo engine was an upcoming engine. I was specifically looking at the thermal design and the thermal related issues for all of these launch vehicle engine systems. I was there from 2011 to 2013. In 2013, I moved to a startup in Bangalore called Team Indus. They were one of the contestants from India in the Google Lunar X Prize, which was essentially a global competition to build out a lunar lander and launch it. And I was the 11th employee in that startup. And my job profile essentially was to design and develop the entire propulsion system for that lunar lander. So not only the rocket engine aspects, but even the propellant tank, the hydraulics and the fluidics of the piping, as well as the pressure and tank. So that entire system was being designed and configured by me for that spacecraft. In 2015, when the system design reached a considerable maturity and we had essentially kind of done the prototyping and was ready to procure flight grade hardware and assemble that, I was asked by the founders of that startup to look at another strategic project that we were initiating in Team Indus. This project was being done in conjunction with the Indian Air Force to build out solar powered high altitude aerial vehicles. And essentially, this project, when I was leading this project, I got the insights into the electric vehicle technology, because essentially this craft was meant to be a fully electric aircraft and powered by solar panels mounted on the wings of this aircraft. And essentially, over the next 2 years till 2017, I was involved in developing the first few prototypes of this aircraft. And then it so happened that Team Indus was looking at a different trajectory for their company, because they were not able to raise subsequent rounds of funding, which was needed to buy a PSLV launch from ISRO. And then we're looking at pivoting to alternative options. And seeing that situation, me and my co-founder Paras decided to take a plunge and get started with cell propulsion, where we decided to focus on development of electric commercial vehicles. Today we have our own one product of electric light commercial vehicle, as well as a electric heavy commercial vehicle. So electric heavy commercial vehicle is just an electric truck that can carry around 10 to 15 ton of payload. So a mid-sized truck that you see in the cities. So these are the two electric vehicles that right now we are deploying in Bangalore. I'll stop here. And after Prakhar's speech, happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nakul sir. It was really exciting to know how you switched to the EVs. I'm sure many of the other students or people who are joined here would want to know more about that. Let me move on to Prakhar sir. We all know Prakhar sir. Prakhar sir is also from the first batch of IIST, and he's a scientist at VSSC. He has a decade worth of experience in systems engineering and composites. He is currently pursuing his advanced masters in systems engineering in France. Prakhar sir was a part of Vyom. As we all know, Vyom, the rocket which is there in IIST, is the first place where all of the freshers go and take their photographs. So it's really embedded in all of our minds. Vyom was Asia's first undergrad student-led sounding rocket program, and he helped design and build and launch the sounding rocket from IIST. He has also been actively involved in the inception and shaping of the IIST Alumni Association, and it is always wonderful to have him here. And we would really love to know more about his journey and his thoughts on leadership. Thank you. Please, Prakhar sir.
Thank you, Prameo. Well, after this luminous stories of Dheeraj and Nakul, I don't have much to share. From my side, what I'll share is what learnings I've gathered from people like Dheeraj, Nakul, Prateep being around me. And just to start off with, let me share a picture with you. Is it up? So our basic question would be, who is a leader, or who is the leader here in this picture? So my question to all of you present over here is, whom do you perceive from this picture is the leader? You can put your answers in the chat in terms of whatever form you feel. To give you an easy tip Here are the letters which you can use maybe, or else you can type something else. So I'll give you maybe half a minute or so or less to get some responses around what you think or who you think might be the right leader. Nice, interesting. IOAOA, photographer, nice. Coach, A, leader, I, boss. Interesting. Waiting for more answers. B, nice. A. All right. Any more answers? Everyone can participate. So it's just no marks over here, no prizes for right or wrong answer. So just answer. Teachers, A. Okay. I, A. Right. All right. So let's move on. So I don't have a particular answer for this, that who is the leader. It's your perspective of who the leader can be. What I see from this picture is something which I'll share with you, and some things which I've learned on my path to where I am right now. For me, it's always that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. So each one of us is standing on someone's shoulder. If you would agree with me on that, then we do realize that it's not just being a leader of certain people or leading a group of people. As you could see from Nakul and Dheeraj's journey, it's about personal leadership. They have led their own lives. All of us are doing that. And once you mature enough or grow to a certain point where you can lead people, that's where the transformation happens. So if I would share my journey just for the last 1 decade, it would be injustice to certain people who had actually made me reach where I am. And starting with that would be my grandparents, who by example showed me that there are no limits of learning. At any point of time, you can start learning from any direction, and it need not be your own background. So just not ever stop learning. And from my parents, I especially learned that you can, even after failures, you can start from scratch. Even if you might not have experience in a certain domain, you can still start in that domain. So those were the first few learning teachings which I have ingrained and find very fruitful to grow yourself or to lead a nice life or even lead your own life. And then definitely I had really awesome and good teachers and friends who were always there to guide me and encourage me. And as you can see from my batchmates present over here, where have they reached and how far they have grown themselves. So with all of these people around you, you tend to imbibe a lot of good qualities. And this is how I say that I stand on the shoulders of giants. I've learned from all of these people. So I don't know on which level you see yourself or myself or anyone, but it's all about how we grow ultimately, how we personally lead ourselves. And then from that to a point where you can lead a group of people, I feel that it's also about when your vision of your own life grows beyond you or an ensemble of a group of people or organizations. That's where when you start seeing something which is beyond you. So a vision which can transform lives, which can actually solve problems of people or problems of the world or problems of a certain group of people. I mean, it could be at any different level where you see that, yes, now this is something which needs to be done. This is something which I believe in. And once you start believing in that, you can start talking to people, and then this is where the transformation starts to happen. When you talk to people and you share your belief, you share your vision, and people start to get convinced, start to believe in your belief, and then when people get together, you see that you don't emerge as a leader on your own. It's the people who give you the, that title or that arrangement makes you form as a leader of group of people. At that point of time, I feel it's more of an opportunity and a responsibility of that person to enable people, to facilitate those believers of that vision to lead the fronts, to lead the development or the transformation which we are looking forward to. And it's very much important in the core values to empathize with people, the people who are believing in the vision which you have sold to them, and you've been able to negotiate and you've been able to grow further. So that's when I feel that 1 + 1 doesn't remain 2. It transforms into something like, it could be anything. It could be the next Google. Who knows? There were two people who started it. Similarly, a lot of people come together, and that's how. So basic element is we all start from standing on shoulders of giants, and then we have our own vision, and then when the vision grows further, we enable others as well to transform that. So this is what I feel is my core learning over the journey. And since we mentioned about two examples, and it's not always about success. We see that there is huge amount of success, and we start from somewhere. And when we start from somewhere, we face a lot of challenges and failures as well. So giving an example of Vyom, Vyom was, you might see a photograph which has a certain number of people, which is around 30. The original team consisted of 48 members. Original team of Vyom had 48 members, and over the course of time, we realized that all of them were not interested actually, and might not be able to come, take it further. How do you meet that challenge? And you're working in an area where you don't know how to solve problems or even what to do, because it was actually rocket science. First thing was to read about it, get guidance from experts, but how do you manage such a team which is not willing to work? We sold the vision. We sold the vision. When I say we, it was actually a collaboration between a set of people who were working behind this to see that how we actually fly it. Because from every corner, what we were told is this is going to be a paper rocket. You're not ever going to fly it. Even our own friends and even our own faculty members and scientists from VSSC, whom we were looking up for guidance, were telling us this is not going to happen. Every one of us. But we believe, no, we have to do it. Until unless we do it, nobody will break through. And we tried to make sure that whomsoever is getting associated has that support from us, is enabled to do their work, and we try to mitigate the challenges for them so that they can work, and then finally we put it together and fly it. So that was one thing which we could do, and finally the rocket was up in the sky and nothing like it. Also, a part I would like to share is also most of my friends over here from the first batch and maybe from the second and third batch also will correlate to this. When we started off in 2007, there was actually nothing like a college, nothing like a educational institute per se. We didn't have a library, we didn't have books in the first place. We didn't have internet access, we didn't have a lot of stuff. But the thing was, thankfully, my parents had given me that picture very clearly. When you are going there, you might not get any basic facilities. You would have to take care of your own self. It added to that, based on my readings from different books, I gathered that it was the first few batches who actually laid down the foundation of the entire culture, or who made that institute great. So with this small notion, I could see that this is our set of few batches who are going to define the culture and how we take this institute further. So it's our responsibility to do something, to create something, and not be dependent on be on the receiving end. And when you start, if people may recall, I'm sharing it here in the open, most of us found that most of the people were just complaining. That's our natural attitude. This should have been there in the college. This is there in IITs. That is there in IITs. This is what you get in even a normal private college, but it's not here in this new college, IIST, which is supposed to be under ISRO. All of those challenges were there. How do you come out of that? You need to shift perspective from saying that if we are not getting this, what can we do to get this? So slowly, we had dialogues, we had interactions, we grew, and we grew a culture of saying that what we can do. We grew consentia from having 9 events within the college to holding 30 events, budget growing from 30,000 to 3 to 4 lakhs and even beyond. So those were the few challenges which we all were facing as so-called leaders of IIST from the first batch. We grew along the line, and similarly I shared for the Vyom. Now coming to the part of my journey, I landed up in a job which was meant for a chemical engineer and not for aerospace engineer. But then I started working on carbon technology, carbon composites. There, my trajectory started with working on process development, then aerostructural design for reusable launch vehicle nose cap. Then I transitioned into spacecraft composites, where I worked on Cartosat 3 camera structure, one of the most complex one, and there as well there were lots of challenges to be faced. And then after 9 years, I came into studying again systems engineering, where I've always found my attraction, whereas always found that this is something which I'm very comfortable with since the beginning of my higher studies in 2007. This is something where I can interface with lots of systems and people and bring things together to solve problems. So this is what I have for you. What answers you have given in the response chat is something for you to contemplate on, something for you to think about, that what is that you want, or where do you want to stand? Do you want to stand in the frame, outside the frame, or what kind of leader can you be? What is your scope of leadership? Can you lead yourself to be something who has lots of accolades, a luminous career, and also you could branch out to have a luminous career for others, making it for others, or leading by example. So there are multiple options for you out there, and definitely each one of them has their own challenges. So this is all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Prakhar sir. It was really thoughtful, and we really need to reflect on that as well. And thanks for not giving up on Vyom and not giving up on the future batches to come. We are really proud to see all of the future batches gain much from your experiences. And as Prakhar sir said, we, the alumni, have all of you as the torchbearers and giants whose shoulder we can stand on. So I thank Dheeraj sir, Nakul sir, and Prakhar sir once again for sharing their insights. I would now like to leave the floor open. Possibly people could ask their questions in the chat, or maybe they can ask it themselves. And before that, please introduce yourself as well. So the floor is open.
Mustafa has raised his hand.
You are not audible.
Mustafa has raised his hand, so Mustafa, you can go ahead and ask.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mustafa Shahid. I am from the 2017 pass out batch, working in Vikram Sarabhai Space Center right now. My question is to Nakul Bhaiya. It's a very sort of a harsh question. Please don't mind. The question is that you were working on the lunar lander, and so much time and effort was put into it, but then it did not materialize as such. So how do you cope with that? Like, so much time of yours and so much effort of yours you have put into it, and then one day they just first thing is it did not materialize. Second, Google itself stopped the price. So how do you come out of it and go on to do new and better things?
What I would like to maybe point out here is that this was a much more difficult moment for the founders of that startup, who actually put in a lot of effort and money to build this up to a particular level, and then they just couldn't see it reach the finishing line. When I went there, as a personal journey of mine, I was looking at that as a big learning experience. So yeah, so yes, its failure essentially was, a bit of was a letdown. But for me, my at least I was fortunate and glad to gain a lot of exposure around how startups are built and how the world works outside globally, and what all are the learnings and the know-how needed for building out something of your own. So those learnings were definitely there for me. And see, the failure in general is essentially a part of life. You can't, you're taking a risk. uh, you have to be prepared that you can fail, you can step, it might not work out. That is true even for what I'm doing today, as my own venture. There is a big amount of big probability that this may not work out, given the large players that are present in this industry also. And we might also not be able to raise funds in the future, and we might have to uh, scale down our operations and our development. So failure is not that much of an issue, and it is much more of a learning. I mean, that's the perspective that you have to have, that even if you fail, you'll be able to cope up with it, because you can, it will be a big uh, opportunity to learn and maybe course correct for the next endeavor that you have. Yeah, thank you. That's all that I like to add to this question.
If nothing else, failure gives you experience.
Yeah.
That's right, Veer. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else?
Nakul, this is Surbhi. Hello, everyone. I wanted to ask another question related to this. I'm from Aerospace Engineering 2012 pass out batch. So, Nakul, I wanted to ask you, you told about your own, how you coped with this, but it was much more disappointing for the founders. So, how did you find them coping with it, and what did they do next?
Sure. So actually, they haven't given up yet. I think I really appreciate that about the founders there. They essentially pivoted the company. If you want specifics, what I last heard was that they were looking at uh, swapping the company and making it a US entity so that they can bid for NASA's project. And essentially, if you remember, I think about 2 years ago, NASA announced that they would be sending multiple missions to the moon to essentially set up a lunar settlement by late 2020. And that meant a lot of new opportunities for the American private space industry. And since they had worked on this lunar lander, they had that experience and know-how. They planned to make this swap and make Team Indus a US entity. So this is a pre-COVID, you know, information that I have. I haven't been in touch with them over during 2020 and 2021, but I would say the learning or the observation from this would be that essentially, if you don't give up, you would find some way. There's always an option, and some path can be charted out. So now they are, even though they are just a 10-member team, they are still alive and still trying to figure out some way of, surviving and sustaining themselves.
Okay, thank you.
We have Sai Krishna here who has raised his hand. Can you can please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Myself Sai Krishna. I'm 2015 class of 2015 BTech Physical Science. I'm working with NRSC Hyderabad. So I'm interested to have some continuation of the discussion with Nakul sir, Nakul Bhaiya. Actually, I was looking forward with the upcoming this unfolding new encouragement to private sectors from space agencies, our ISRO, that is NSIL in space and all these allied activities. So as Nakul Bhaiya was mentioning that ISRO has backed up and support for launching. Yeah, am I right? Is that so?
Pardon?
Bhaiya?
Yeah, what's the
That
question?
launch support for our for the Indus lunar rover
Oh no,
was
they were not able to raise all the
contract was
funds because
withdrawn.
with ISRO it was supposed to be a commercial transaction. They were going to buy out an entire launch, an entire PSLV launch. So that definitely comes with a bill. So for that bill, they had to do a
Yeah.
fundraise. So the problem was not on as such ISRO's front, but rather on the investment front, which is, you know, one of the most common reasons for majority of startups to fail. Like they say that 1% of the startups make out and remaining 99% fail. Out of those 99%, I think 40% will fail because of lack of investments, and the remaining 60% would be split into team issues or improper product or lack of product market fit. So there can be many reasons for a startup to fail, but lack of investment or failure to raise investment is definitely up top there.
If I may reframe the question this way, that if it had been now, the current scenario with the growing encouragement to private sector, would Team Indus taken forward in a better stage now, if it had been now, rather than 2018?
So even if I look in retrospect, I would feel that definitely they would have had a better chance today because the policies are much more supportive. The government is also quite open, and you know these new changes and policies are coming in to encourage privatization in space sector. So that would definitely have helped because what I feel is that maybe even if they've gotten the similar bill from ISRO, the investors would have felt more confident. Given these new policy frameworks, the macroeconomic environment looks much more promising to a potential investor who is coming in. So you know maybe they might have been able to raise their next fund investment to you know keep the ship going.
Yeah. I have a point to add to that.
So it's an encouraging scenario. Okay, right.
Yeah, I have a
Yes, Bhaiya.
additional point to that. The formation of InSpace and NSIL might not have helped. Reason being, Google Lunar X Prize had a condition that the mission should not be government funded or government aided. But given the scenario, as Nakul already pointed out, that the landscape of space technology and everything has changed now, so investors would be more willing to take that risk as compared to a couple of years back. That thing has definitely changed.
Okay.
Maybe we can move on to next question by Aprameyo.
Yeah, I actually have a question for Dheeraj sir. In this time, actually, we see most of the people moving towards corporate sector or going towards high funding sectors. So I wanted to know what made you move towards academia, because we rarely see people, or at least I do not know of many people who move towards academia.
See, it's a personal perspective. As Prakhar has already pointed out, it depends on you what you want to be in future and what career you take, whether it is corporate or it's academic. I would say I was lucky enough that in academics I got such people who always kept on motivating me in different areas and different research areas, which kept my interest alive. It might not be always the case that there are always hurdles, whether it's a corporate sector or it's an academic sector. So it depends on what people you meet, what are your desires, and what you ultimately want to achieve. My goal when I started in IST, even before that, I was dreaming to do my PhD. So that having a doctorate just in front of my name was my childhood dream. So that always kept me motivating towards achieving the greater things in terms of academia. So that was my ultimate goal. And after PhD, I got to meet certain people that in my PhD was a big collaborative step, as I already mentioned in my introduction speech, that I was collaborating with 15 researchers. 15 PhDs working all together on a one project is a big thing. Even small industries like Nakul pointed, Team Indus was a 10-member team. And we as a PhD academic researchers, a 15-member team working on to get things worked out for the industry, as well as create a link between industry and academia. I always, when I was doing my PhD, I always felt that this is missing when we ask students a question whether you want to go in academia or in a corporate. The straight answer we'll get is go to corporate because they pay higher, but they don't see the link between industry and academia. And that is what I am looking as a perspective for the education sector to grow in India, to show that perspective to students at a very early stage, that no industry could flourish without a backup of the research or the backup from the academic background or backup from the academicians. That is the reason why it always motivated me to be in academics. And I will not say that I will continue to be in academics, but it depends on what opportunities come. It may be tomorrow I get a better, more research-oriented opportunity in the industry, and I may opt for that. So for the future aspirants like you, I would not suggest to fix yourself that whether you want to go to a corporate or to an academia. It depends on what opportunities you get and what you want to achieve in your life. That is the foremost important thing. And that would keep you motivated towards moving into that path. And that is the same scenario with me.
Thank you so much.
That is why still I am in academia, and Teju Mohan sir said in the start of this conversation that he is happy to see me in teaching. So it is what you want to achieve and what you want to be. That is the ultimate thing.
Right. Following, I have a couple of questions again for Dheeraj sir. So first question is, what would you say were the major challenges that you faced pursuing an academic career? And second, I think a lot of us would be interested in knowing how the academic scene is different in India and, for example, UK, where you have been, or any other countries that you have been. Yes.
See, the one of the biggest challenges to be in academics is similar to what is with the academicians, as Nakul pointed out, the funding. Because if you want to be in academic research, you need to have constant funding to support your research. And research is such a thing that you don't know what the outcome would be. So it's very difficult to convince the organizations like the governments to give you funds to continue this research and what the dissemination result of this would be. Because if, like, for example, if the British government is funding my research currently, they would want to know what the outcome would be, how they can use it. It's not only they're not going to fund only my lab, okay, that you can do some chemicals here and there, but what ultimately it could be achieved. That is one of the biggest hurdle to be in academics. And once if you go on to the academics, I would separate in two parts. One is the research-oriented academics and another is the teaching. If you go on to teaching, you have a different struggles in terms of the students and their feedback. Because if you are not, like someone I think pointed out to Balaji in the starting, that sir, please don't give D- to the students. So it's again a big hurdle, because if you are strict to students, and then they might not give you a good feedback, and it might be harder in your progression. And if you are very lenient, they might not try to learn things. There are different challenges what you face in academics compared to what you face in industries. I feel it is a good thing is that you have already defined goals that you want to achieve this. Plans are already made at this stage currently. But when you go on to spend more years, like Nakul he has started, so he need to define his own trajectory right now. But when you as a engineers, when you start in a industry, you already have a set goal. You already know what to do. You don't need to define it. But in academia, as well as a startup, you need to define those things. So that is a tougher thing. In terms of coming on to your second question, the difference between academia in India as well as abroad, I don't see a lot of difference there. Initial perspective when I was in IIST, it was that at something like is always said, the grass is greener on the other side. But when you go on to the other side, you realize it's the same thing. So that has been when I stepped out of India in 2013 to look for more opportunities. The current scenario in India is you will get opportunities there as well, but there is some struggle because of bureaucracies and all those things which are currently in India. but they are also existing here. But the thing is that since you are going up, it's the developed countries, these are developed countries, it's more easier to get those things done. But it's still the bureaucracy exists everywhere, all around the world, whether you go in any country, it doesn't matter. And in terms of research work, in terms of the labs, it may be that in some of the, like if you go to IITs, you might get a better lab compared to in private colleges. The same scenario here, if you go to Imperial College, you will get better lab. If you get to go to a small private college, there might not be that much exposure. But it's the same thing, whatever you feel you have in terms of academics in India as well as abroad. I don't feel there is a major difference here. It is the one thing which I want in India, which I feel is lacking, is in terms of industrial academic collaboration. And in terms of government support to what I felt being in BITS was that government supports. It is not that the government does not support the universities, but there is still the support more of a higher level academic institutions like IITs, BITS, NITs, and the funding as when it goes to trickle down to the small academic institutions, it's a bit less. But compared to in abroad, if you have a nice project, it doesn't matter from which university you are, you will get that project sanctioned for you in terms of the research work. And in terms of the industrial collaborations, industries and academia work very closely, particularly in United Kingdom, where I am currently working, which I feel a bit lacking in India, as the IISc was the first step in this, in which ISRO and IISc was supposed to work in very close collaboration. But I think what my learnings from that was that it didn't happen up to that extent as was expected. I don't say that it is not happening, but the expectation level there was a pretty high in terms of the involvement of ISRO with IISc. But I think that didn't materialize up to that extent. And I want that to grow further.
Yes, I think we are definitely like moving slowly towards it. So I would like to just highlight that recently we have had this Advanced Space Technology Cell, which was formed at IIST to actually foster more collaborative projects. I'm seeing there are no more questions, so I'll actually go ahead and ask another question to Prakavya. So a lot of us, so one thing which I feel is slightly easier in a startup or academic environment is that you're not interacting with as many people, overall, and there's a certain sense that you can control your trajectory or what you want to do. But when you're working in a very large organization like ISRO, it's sometimes very difficult to navigate through these structures. And I guess a lot of us who are working in ISRO or even large organizations outside do feel that we don't feel like we are in control of where we are heading. And so I would like to know, like, how did you see it, and what was your way to navigate through it, and still retain that personal identity of sorts?
Yeah. So definitely in large structured companies or organizations, it's very difficult to control your trajectory. I mean, it's definitely because not every decision is in your hands, but what is in your hands is your work and the way you deal with your work, the kind of deliverables you give. So in my case, I'll give you an example. I started up with something which was meant for a chemical engineer, but then I clearly showcased that I can design stuff. I can design and analyze. I can do this. So started with a small component. It was a joint, though a bit complex joint for LPSC. And there were some challenges earlier being faced. I solved that challenge. So people could clearly see that here is a guy who can solve our challenges with respect to design and structure analysis and stuff like that. So they gave me the next opportunity that, okay, this is something which we need to do and you do this. I did that well. Then the deputy director felt that, yeah, maybe you will fit somewhere else better, that is in the composite structure design. So he transited me from there. There again, when I'm facing, or I should not say facing, but whenever you are designing stuff, there will be some of the other challenges which you will come across and you will have to solve. And the way you approach and the way you deal with those problems and the way you deal with the team, you slowly navigate around and reach a stage where you will be able to say what kind of work you want to do. But then definitely it gets restricted to the framework of the organization, the rules of the organization. Like, let's say tomorrow I want to say that I want to work for this kind of project, or I want to move from here to that team. It's not that easier until and unless it's a private company where they have a different setup altogether for encouraging that. But within the purview of ISRO, you have certain limitations. But nobody is restricting you from working extra or working on something which is not defined for you. So this is something like, if you have some spare time, maybe do some reading and implement things. Once you showcase a certain result, now or later, it will definitely get recognized. If it is not, if you don't have the right forum, somehow or the other, you will be able to project it and get benefit out of it. Then this is how slowly your trajectory moves. So I'll give you an example. There was a event which was organized by headquarters for citing the vision for ISRO or space technology within India for 2030. So this was being organized in 2019, and they were asking for, what is your vision for space technology in India for 2030? What should we be doing at that point of time? At that point of time, I had shared a proposal, but that proposal was not accepted. After a year, a committee was formed within the center to propagate that technology. Now, seeing that from my entity, they saw that I had worked on such a proposal of, working out a vision. They nominated me as a member to review the proposals. This was a committee for overall review. So they nominated me there. So at that point, if you look in retrospection, I would feel, or anybody would feel, dejected that, come on, this is a very crucial technology and we should definitely be working on it now so that we are well off in 2030. And you're not accepting it. But then draw the circle around, after a couple of months, this is how it worked out. So sometimes you have to just put in extra effort to where you want to be, without even giving a consideration that what is restricting you or what is not there for you or what you might get out of it. Just like, entrepreneurs do it. You take a risk and do that. Some extra effort is definitely required. There are few other people amongst alumni as well, I know of them, who had put in some extra effort and got to a certain level where they changed their trajectory within the rigid structure of an organization.
Thank you for that. We have Lokesh Rishabh raising hand, so you can go ahead and ask your question, Lokesh.
Thank you. Good evening to all present here. I'm Lokesh Rishabh, third year aerospace engineering student from IST. So as Prakarsh mentioned, his first venture was in chemical engineering, then he changed to design. So as an undergraduate, how can I know what should be my career path, or whom my interests lie in which system, like for liquid propulsion or in thermal, or as sir mentioned, designing? Means suppose I opt for a wrong center, means which doesn't withhold my, like, I'm not able to unleash or tap into my whole potential. So how can we think in that aspect?
So shall we take that in rounds, because every one of us had that kind of experience?
Yes, sir,
I
that
hope
will be
so.
good, sir. Means if everyone
Nakul?
can share their experience.
You are
Nakul,
muted.
you are muted.
Nakul, you are muted.
On mute.
I just have one suggestion here, and just one thing I like to point out, that you are too early in your you are at such an early stage that it actually won't matter. Whatever comes your way as an opportunity, you should be open to accept it and work towards it. Even I worked there for that first 2 years, and I didn't know what I was getting into, what projects I would be working on, right? And then I even felt that if I had to even start something on my own, I won't be able to do it. And I got into this startup to get a understanding and a perspective around how do you build business, right? So you just give it some time. Whatever opportunity comes your way, be open to it, work with sincerity, and keep upgrading your knowledge. You will be able to get a lot of insights and a lot of exposure in coming years that will help you, come up with a plan of what you want to do. And once you have that plan, then it's up to you how you go ahead and execute that.
Maybe Dheeraj sir can go next.
Yeah, I'm done.
The same thing from my side as well. Since you are in third year only, so if I am not wrong, your specialized courses would just started to begin now. You will be coming on to specialized courses, maybe structural propulsion, aerodynamics, anything. It would be coming up now. And since it would be, if you are not very much particular about what you want to do at this instant of time, because it may be there are some students who are very since the start of their BTech, they know that okay, I want to do this thing only. So how I need to go, they try to figure the path. So if you are not in that phase, then I would suggest to give it more time, as Nakul said. So as the time progresses, you will come to know that what is your stronger thing and what is your weaker thing. And I would say that there is never a thing which is wrong. If you point out that I entered into a wrong domain, that is never the case. It may be it's just a different perspective that you might be. It may be that it might be boring from your perspective. You might not get that much interest. But it might be the scenario that if you spend some time in that part itself, a year or so, you might get so much knowledge about that you want to do the same thing throughout your life. So you don't know how the thing will progress. And the science and technology, particularly engineering, is made of that thing. That you don't know what is in the bucket. So you always, when you go into depth, you realize that okay, these things are there, and it's very early for you to particularly emphasize that okay, I will, if I go into that, then it would be wrong, or which area I should go ahead. So I would suggest give some time, enhance your learning. That is more important for your career, for your future.
Yeah.
Over to you, Prakhar.
Yeah, thanks. I recall this same perspective. If you guys also would remember, we would have similar perspective when we were students, because we are taking some specialized courses, so we should be working in that area. We should be contributing to that area. We have gathered so much of knowledge and applied ourselves and doing this and that. And now you hear a different perspective. So this is what 10 years of experience gives you. This is what you actually learn through. What happens is, I would suggest as a student, you need to explore and find out what all areas are a stronger point for you and what all are weaker points for you. And then try to see that you get some deliverables out of those areas, as in you create some sort of project or some sort of output which will add to your credibility in that domain. So it could be while you are working as a student or you are working as a professional. So even if you don't get to work in those stronger areas of your domain, now let's say tomorrow or after a couple of years, you find out that there is a particular area of technology which you have not thought about, which you have not worked upon, you don't know about it, but seems luring. So what would you do? You would start learning in that area, right? And then start applying yourself. So this is also a possibility, and the examples are, I mean, now he has left, Prateep, Nakul, they themselves have done that. Being from aerospace engineering background, one diverged into image processing for agriculture and satellite imagery and remote sensing, other one into electrical cell propulsion. So it's very much possible that you would diversify later on as the need comes or you find the opportunities. Also, in a organizational setup, when you find yourself, you are landing up in a job where you might not like it. See, for my part, I knew I never wanted to work with chemistry, and I am given a place where I'm supposed to deal with the processing technology. Like, come on, that's not possible. I mean, this is totally opposite. But then, then sooner I realized that I am of the few selected people in this entire country who's working on this technology, and this is such a technology you cannot learn by reading all the papers, all the theory which is available in books or watching videos. You cannot. You have to get your hands dirty in that technology, and then only you learn. That gave me a different perspective. So I knew about certain things which would help me when I am designing a component, when I'm designing anything, I would be very particular about if it can be processed or not, if the process it's critical. So that added to my perspective of dealing with things and bringing in that process layer into my design perspective. Similarly, I always had a mind of working in systems engineering area since the beginning, and the term got introduced me through Vyom project because I was part of the systems engineering team. Since then, I always wanted to work in systems engineering area, but ISRO doesn't offer you just like that, right? I had a really nice guide in VSSC. He told me, Prakhar, it will be good if you work in some development area first and then venture out into systems engineering area. That way, your experience and learning will be different, and you will have some actual value addition to the systems engineering domain when you have expertise of certain development. So yeah, then I thought, yes, why not? So 9 years of development, 9 years of design and development and process technology. But during all of that time, I made it. I didn't make it that way, but it so happened that I got to interface with different people, and I could actually apply myself as a systems engineer. I could resolve problems for different domains coming together. So it's all matter that how you grow yourself, as I've already pointed out, how you keep learning, how you grow yourself and apply. So find some time to grow yourself in your strong areas and maybe develop the others as well on the parallel. Hope that answers.
Yes, sir.
Lots
Thank you
of
very
talk.
much, sir.
So we'll take a couple of more questions. We have Amit Mishra again, a third year student. So Amit, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening to all. I am Amit Mishra, third year aerospace. So my question is to Dheeraj sir and Prakhar sir. Means since Dheeraj sir is still in the academics line, so as you know, still we are having the online learning. So we have not access to the experiments and labs. So I just want to come here. So I want to do the experiment. That is my personal thing. I love that thing to do. But till now, we are not able to do that thing. So that temperament is losing us. We are losing that thing. Means we are only have to academics just read this thing, write the paper. Means we are not having labs. If we are having a virtual labs that are not that much useful. So we are lagging in that sector. So for that purpose, still, as Dheeraj sir mentioned, that our advanced courses like the elective courses are going to come in the next semester itself. But still, I don't know what to take. I mean, what to take, still I don't have the confidence to, yeah, this is the field I should take this thing, because I haven't done anything lab session in that thing, because we went outside in the second semester itself. And the second question to the Prakhar sir is that sir told us that you never know what you want to do. So can I ask you, sir, that still do you know that you still want to do that particular thing? Means still that thing is forever. It's some time come. Yeah, right now this is the time I know this is the field I want to go. Thank you, sir. That's it.
Okay, so let me answer the first question. The missing of the lab. See, this is a very different scenario. This COVID scenario, we never expected this to happen. It happens in a decade. Last pandemic happened in 1917. So 100 years later, now we are in this phase. And I think this is one of the toughest time for the students, particularly as a faculty member. I can realize that particularly lack of experiments is one thing which you particularly don't want in your academic career, particularly when you are learning. But the thing is that we need to deal with it. The most important thing, as you can think, for our first batch, we were having a very few labs. So at least the thing is that what we try to do it here, in particularly University of Liverpool and also in BITS, that we try to organize the plan is that accordingly when the students are back on campus. So we planned that we would arrange the experiment for the previous batch. It means, for example, you will be going to your next semester. Maybe the next semester the on-campus classes start. So when you are on the campus, you can request the faculty members involved in those experiments to give additional sessions, particularly to give hands-on experience to you onto those experimental work. That is the one thing which we planned when I was in BITS, and particularly we are planning the same thing in University of Liverpool currently. So that is the best thing we can do in this pandemic scenario. The Second thing that another thing which you asked, which you commented that in the coming semesters you would be having a specialized courses, and you are still not, since you are having online classes and you are not able to figure out what would be the best courses to take. So in that manner, I would suggest to interact with your faculty members involved, particularly in your current semester, as well as in who are going to teach those courses in the subsequent semester specialized courses. They would be able to give you more insight into those things. That and what, as far as I remember, particularly whatever courses I have done in my bachelor's, in my master's, some of them have their interdependency with other courses, but most 90% of the courses not. So they are not interdependent. That if you are, and since the first 2.5 years of BTech is always having the general courses, which feeds into all the specialized courses. This you will learn when you do the masters or PhD. You will learn that all of them have a similar starting point. If you are going into the CFD or going into the structures, all will have the mathematics behind that. All will have the similar physics behind that. So it's not the most of the courses does not have a prerequisite. So if you go into the course structure, it will give you an idea about what you plan to do in the future and what would be more better aligned. It also aligns with the previous question what we answered in terms of what you want to achieve, and the first 2.5 years gives you an overview of aerospace engineering. The labs give you, the experiments give you what hands-on you could get, and now the specialized courses would be a carry-on that. I can understand it is a tough situation, the COVID scenario, online lectures, but the best thing to get best out of it is to interact with your faculty members and to interact with your seniors. Like you can interact with us or the other alumni members who would be able to guide you in that manner. Over to you, Prakhar, for the next question.
Thanks, Dheeraj. That was a very extensive answer. I hope he'll carry some points with him. I'll answer a part of the previous question as well. See, there definitely are challenges in the current world, but maybe you all together can find a solution for this. Maybe there is a possibility that you create a solution which would help you to get a, if not the complete experience of experiments, a partial experience of experiments, some sort of hands-on. It's very much possible. So it's up to you that how you find out that crack, how you get people together and actually devise a solution which can be implemented. Maybe if it can not be implemented by you, if it is supposed to be implemented by IIST, form a group, approach the right set of people, approach the faculty and then the higher management and others, and try to convince them that this is something which we need to implement so that the students don't lose out the real learning experience. That's very much important. Experiments are the thing. I mean, without that, your learning is not at all complete. So this is something which you will have to emphasize, but I would recommend that maybe discuss with your friends and try to see that what can be done, what solution is possible that will help you at least gain some partial learning experience there. And then coming to the part of the last question, which is how do you decide? So how do you decide what do you want to do, or what do you actually want, or what is the purpose, or all that gamut of questions? I can recommend you two things. One is to look at this this puzzle from two perspectives, from two directions actually. One is from the perspective of the kind of job is being done. So the kind of environment and the kind of actual job or actual tasks people do in the fields which are right now confusing for you. Let's take for an example, I am taking, and I'll assume that you're from aerospace and give you an example. So you can assume that what a person from fluid dynamics background is doing and what a person from structural or a manufacturing background is doing. Try to find out those people in the industry, talk to them. Try to find out what kind of tasks they do, what kind of challenges they face in their daily job, what kind of projects do they handle, what does their daily schedule look like, all of that. Try to find those things out, for each of those domains which even vaguely seem interesting to you. That will give you, and also ask them what all has helped them in academics to be there, or what kind of academics is still helping them, still they are pursuing. That's one part. Second is, look at your own life. You are in third year now, right? So you have had a good amount of time period with engineering fields and different, at least basic subjects, I would say. There would be some areas which would click with you, and some might not click with you that much. Also, if you have worked on a particular project or team project per se, where different kinds of technologies were there, or different kind of involvement or perspectives were supposed to be there, may not be completely there, but were supposed to be there, there would be a natural response which you would have had towards that project. You would have responded to certain challenges more enthusiastically as compared to the challenges from other domain. That is a particular domain where you are currently interested in. That could help. So I'll give you an example that Dheeraj, myself, and a couple of others, we were working back in 2007 in trying to create a robot or something of that sort. I could find myself that I was interested in mechanisms and design aspects, because there were multiple things being discussed, and whenever we were discussing those challenges, I could easily contribute to that. I would understand the need, I would understand what the challenges are there for other domains, but this was something which I could come up with creative ideas with. So just giving sharing an example here. These are the two things which may help you to find out which domain suits you or where you would like to work. In case that doesn't work out for you, we have given you examples. In case you don't land up in the field where you are supposed to work, there itself you might have to find out some opportunity which will help you to explore the domain which you actually want to grow in. So let's say, for an example, you land up in quality systems, just checking up of systems. In ISRO, I'm giving a typical example which a lot of people get frustrated with, is landing up in system reliability, and you have to do just the quality check for someone else's work. If you look very clearly, you will definitely find that there are gaps in the way things are being implemented, in the way the quality process itself is being implemented, right? And that's where you can start putting in your creative thought and start putting in your own solution. And then this is how you will navigate your own trajectory and finally land up to the place where you want to be. I hope that will help you. So
yes,
that's
sir.
all
Yes,
from
sir.
my side.
Sharing, sir.
Thank you for those very elaborate and interesting answers there. We can have one more question if anybody is interested in asking. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and conclude the session. Okay, I see that there are no more questions, and we are also close to the end time for the session. So I would just like to thank all the three speakers, Dheeraj Bhaiya, Nakul Bhaiya, and Prakhar Bhaiya, for sharing their experiences and answering all our questions. I would also like to thank IIST, Dr. Shajamon, Computer Support Group, as well as Registrar IIST, for helping us organize this event. And lastly, I would like to thank all the participants who have joined us for this session. It was, I'm sure they'll be taking a lot back with them, as I would. So thank you, everyone. And it was really nice seeing all of you. And as Pradeep Bhaiya mentioned, first batch for the win, I would just end it with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye, Nakul. See you sometime.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks.